Welcome to an episode of Subconscious Realms. I'm your host, General Lee, and for tonight's Swapcast, we're about to go 4 deep as we welcome 3 extraordinary returning guests. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dave Petrella of Dave Petrella YouTube channel. We've got Jim the Ninja, Threshold Saint, and Sir Robby Marx of Meta Manifest. Now then, gentlemen.
Hey.
Appreciate it, General.
Yes, thank you very much, each and every one. It is a true honour to be speaking with, like I said, 3 extraordinary guests. You know, I can't thank you enough for the work we've done individually and together. We've been, some wild conversations, but like today we've got Dave who's going to bring a little bit of Oak Island to start with.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, people who have watched my content probably know that I was involved with Oak Island, Nova Scotia. It's called The Curse of Oak Island on the History Channel for people who get the History Channel on cable TV. And so I went up there in 2017, and the production company called Prometheus Entertainment, they recorded my work. It was probably 8-9 hours of a recording. It wasn't like a half an hour kind of thing. And started off with an hour in what's called the War Room, which is where we, all talk about our theories and field questions and stuff like that. Make sure that everyone understands what I'm proposing, or what whoever the theorist is proposing. And then we went out into the field, and when I talk about Oak Island, it's obviously on an island. It's about 140 acres, so it's not tiny, but it's big, and it's bigger than you would think, especially from looking at the show.
Mm.
There's parts of the island and you can't even get through because the trees are so dense. And it's like the comparison I've been using, it's like one of those, I can speak about like Boston, Massachusetts. It's like kind of when you enter the public transportation underground, you got that turnstile thing that you have to put your payment in before you can pass through. That's how the forest is. It's like tree after tree after tree like that, and you cannot bend these branches. It's unbelievable. I tried to go between 2 trees and it just stopped me like a brick wall. Very, very dense island. Parts of it, especially the western, northwestern part of the island. So in any case, we were out in the field. I did a lot of work. They never aired my segment. It's Hollywood. I'm not going to say more about Hollywood right now, but people can have a kind of general idea of what I'm getting at with that. It's about money. It's about how many viewers can we get, and it's about keeping things dumbed down enough so everyone can understand it, even if you have to repeat the same thing, 1,000 times. So, and I'm not the only one. My friend Jake Roberts, he's got a YouTube channel called The Ghost of Bacon, and he's an absolute genius. He's a cryptologist, and he's part of the association, Think in America, for that. And he's done a lot of good work too. He was on the island, I believe, twice, and they recorded all of his material. He didn't get any airtime either. And so there's this common thread going on where it's not that there's not people who probably more likely have a better idea of what's going on than other people. It's that they're not showing us on air. And you can read into that however you want to. So in any case, did a lot of work. I actually went back in 2018 off camera. I did a little bit more work with Rick, who's of course the star of the show, Rick Lagina, on the island. And that was kind of it. And then after that, after 2018, they really got strong on the security, and they installed new gates and stuff. And you can't really like walk around the island anymore. It's really, really tightly kind of guarded. So things have really changed. And, again, while there's money, they're going to continue to push the narrative, whichever one is, they're thinking more people are going to watch. That's unfortunately what they do.
Right.
And I'm just looking for, I'm looking for data. I'm looking for numbers. I'm looking for stuff that, it would be like a 1 in a billion chance that could have been a random orientation or a random number or array of numbers or, what have you. And if, my belief truly is that if you're paying attention enough, and I think I always say this on every show I do, man, you have to have the right heart. I believe that the universe reads that more than anything. No matter what comes out of your mouth, it's the intention of the heart. And that all that is just being a decent civil human being and having benevolence for humankind at the forefront of your mind and everything you do.
Mm.
Yes, true that, mate.
But anyway, I'd like to hear, Jen. I'd like to hear what you talked about with it, and then I can kind of chime in, and we'll see how much we have in common with that.
Well, I actually don't know that much about Oak Island. My specialty is definitely Tantra and Tantric Buddhism and Kabbalah and a little bit of Vedic astrology. But I think it's very fascinating. I think the whole maritime is very fascinating. I think the where they sign the Confederation documents is a star fort. I think, and there's another star fort that's a little bit down the way, and that was the French one, and then there's a British one. So I think that's very interesting to me. I mean, I don't really have anything to add, Dave. You're kind of the, this is really your area. So, but I think it's really fascinating. There's so much Templar history. There's, the Mi'kmaq flag is a Templar flag. It's a very fascinating place.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one of the things I can say, I don't know, you guys probably haven't heard this. I think I only said it on one show, but this is really what I would like for people to focus on, coming from someone who's been after this for almost 10 years, I guess. I've been doing research on Oak Island. And I'm not, I'm happy to listen to anyone's theories, man, but the only thing I ask people is that, bring forward some good evidence. Like, theory is cool, but you got to give me something to work with. You got to give other people something to work with. Can we take action on it? I'm very big on action. I love information, but we have to be able to apply it to something positive. Do something good for someone else or for the narrative or whatever, education, however you want to look at that. But this is what I want to bring up, and I brought it up on a show too. I think 2 shows ago I did. Is that it's about Mahone Bay. Mahone Bay is where Oak Island is located. It's in Nova Scotia. It's sort of the southern part of the coastline of Nova Scotia, kind of in the center. It's about 60 miles or about an hour to the southwest of the capital, Halifax. And so it's not like in the middle of nowhere. There's some parts of Nova Scotia that truly are in the middle of nowhere. And you really feel like you can't believe that there's any civilization around anywhere, especially when you get out kind of towards the western inland area. I got lost on a road out there, man. It was actually not marked. It was mostly dirt or gravel. And I had literally no idea where I was. I had no idea when I'd get to the next town. No kilometer marks, nothing. And so thank God I came out somewhere. But anyway, so here's the thing about Mahone Bay, is that Mahone Bay has about 360 islands. And we can come back to that number at some point. I mean, it's very important for astrology, really for all of the esoteric knowledge. You have to know 360. That's the circle. And if you don't know the circle, man, you're you got to get the basic geometry down before you're going to press further into sacred geometry or numbers or numerology or whatever. Really important to understand that. So anyway, I noticed that from the beginning, probably back in 2016. And I'm like, this is probably maybe not random that there's about 360 islands. I should probably put that, in the backlog of my head somewhere. One of the first notes I ever took about from the show back in 2015 was that fact, about 360 islands. And then when I started to zoom in on the islands, they're all strange looking islands. I do believe in glacial shaping. I'm sure that happened. But when you talk about it looks like a knife in butter, creating some of these arcs and some of the swirls and stuff that, for instance, on Oak Island, a lot of people believe looks like a baby elephant. This is not something, I guarantee it, this is not something that a glacier randomly created. When you start looking at the numbers and the orientations and latitude, longitude lines and all of this stuff, it's been created. Now, the question is by who? And that's like the big question. And it gets really, really interesting the further out you go with that one. But Mahone Bay, and Oak Island is towards the back of Mahone Bay, kind of up against the mainland of Nova Scotia. I found a graphic once, and I don't know, this is how it always happens for me. It always disappears. Either my phone dies or like it just, the article disappears from the internet out of nowhere. But I did have an article. It was a really good, I think, like PDF document. And what it was showing the geology of Mahone Bay, and in particular, how the exact words for it, but how the sort of the water has changed, the water levels have changed, the makeup of the water, fresh water versus salt water, all this stuff. And it showed, I think, 4 different pictures. The first picture, let me think about this. Yeah, the first picture, and I don't know the years because I forgot and I can't access it anymore. So if anyone has that, please send that to me. That'd be great. But there's something that's called the Gold River. And the Gold River is sort of the main river that empties into Mahone Bay from Nova Scotia at the very northern, sort of the northern top of the bay up there. And when you look at this graphic, it actually peels back the time, or the time chronology. I don't know if it's 1,000 years, something like that, maybe a little bit more. I can't remember. But anyway, it shows that when the water levels were lower, and we do know that at least locally in Mahone Bay, the water levels, I guess, are increasing at about, I think, a foot every 100 years by a foot. So it's fairly high. And anyway, it shows the Gold River when the water levels were much lower. And actually what happened at that time is that the river passed by the northeast corner of Oak Island, right along the northeast corner, what they call the Boulderless Beach. I'm sure some of you guys know about that. And it kind of went right along that shoreline and then out the bay, and it eventually emptied into the ocean. And at the same time, you can see that some of the islands, in fact, most of the islands, there was more land that was exposed than 500 years into the future, or whatever, or 1,000 years into the future, where we're sitting right now. So not only was the river actually flowing right past the island, which of course you can't see anymore because it's an underwater current now, and we also know that because when they dived off of that corner there, they met a really strong current. It was so strong they couldn't even, basically stand on the bottom. They were being blown off course constantly. There was also a really strange magnetic anomaly over there, and I have no idea what that exactly would be. There's tons of magnetic anomalies all over the island. That's a whole different topic. But in any case, so if we peel back the timeline, the chronology further, maybe a few thousand years, again, I can't remember the exact time, you see that the river system cut a fairly large channel through the entire bay, all of Mahone Bay, before it emptied out into the ocean. And then I think the third slide was actually, this is when it started to get really interesting to me. You can see at the edge of the bay, I mean, the bay is not like really shallow, but it's a lot shallower than even like the continental shelf. And then of course the ocean, way shallower than the ocean. But at the very edge of the bay, there was originally sort of like a berm, for lack of a better term. And that would have been the edge of what was called a freshwater lagoon. So Mahone Bay supposedly used to be a freshwater lagoon. And this was, I think, 8,000 years ago, according to that diagram, or 8,000 BC, something like that. And you can see it like there's like a lip at the edge of the bay if you look at the bathymetry, I guess. And that's the idea, is that around 8,000 BC or something, the Atlantic Ocean actually breached over that berm and flooded it with salt water, and then it became part of the ocean. But it was not part of the ocean. This is according to geologists, not according to me. It was not part of the ocean originally. So now knowing that opens up a whole different system of questions. And we know, of course, you mentioned the Mi'kmaq. We know the Mi'kmaq were all over that area. They've been there, supposedly forever. Many of the native tribes throughout North America say, we've always been here. And when that question comes up, you really want to ask, I mean, for me, you get into metaphysics. There's no way out of that one, because either people migrated from like a central location on the earth, or they didn't. I don't know what else to, I think the earth was seeded actually independently across the face of the earth in these little cultural pockets. And I think the plan is that when you go forward a couple thousand years, and at some point after you develop your culture, you're going to be forced to interact with the culture that's next to you. Maybe it's 100 miles away. Maybe there's mountains between you. I don't know. I don't believe in one central location. I believe in many. And I believe that local gods brought the people there, and like local demigods, I guess, taught them the rudiments of society, and then kind of let things develop naturally. And then eventually, you have people interacting with you that were from a different seeded race somewhere else on the planet. Doesn't have to be that far even, because a lot of the tribes, even in America that I've researched, they're not necessarily that far from each other, but they might have very different customs. So anyway, long story short, noticing that it used to be a freshwater lagoon, Mahone Bay, and the shapes of the islands are very weird. There's no getting around that. I mean, there's one that looks like, I don't remember the name. There's one that looks like a crow. Looks exactly like a crow standing. You can see the tail feathers coming down. You see the angle around the neck, the top of the head. You see the beak coming out. And you've got like one that looks like a shoe. You've got one that looks like an alien's head. So something else happened. This is not, it's not natural history. Something else happened here. And I'll just make one final point. I'll let you guys take it from there, open up the conversation. But one of the things that is really exciting for me about doing shows with General is this connection. And it's this connection between sort of the Americas and Europe. And one of the things I had mentioned, I don't know if it was the last show, General, I'm sure you probably remember it. We did a show on Atlantis. Robby, were you with us on that one? I can't remember.
Yes, we was. Yeah.
We did do a show on Atlantis.
All right, so I was talking about the mid-Atlantic ridge, and about how, again, we have geological evidence suggesting very strongly, if not definitively, that Europe and the Americas, North America in particular, for our purposes right now, were connected.
Yes.
And the big question for me is, when was it connected? And I don't think it was that long ago. Again, in terms of what I feel like what's been misrepresented through the ages, there's something else going on here. And I believe it was a continuum of culture. And that's going to be the reason why, and you know this, Robby, very well, but you got America's Stonehenge not far from you.
Right.
And that part over there was connected to Ireland and also like Morocco.
Right.
In Africa.
And with American Stonehenge, you have some Druidic inscriptions that they found. And then if you line the coastlines up, basically the Maine into New Hampshire coastline lines up with like Ireland, and it's like the same type of hills, the same type of fauna, the same mythical type creatures. Lovecraft even gets into a lot of how mysterious the woods of Maine and New Hampshire are.
Oh, absolutely, man. And about the small people, and of course all that mythology in that area. The Mi'kmaq, it's big with them.
Yep.
But what else does that remind us of? It reminds me, I'll speak for myself, it reminds me of the fairy lore and the Irish lore.
Exactly.
And the Sidhe and these earthen mounds and everything. The only place I can think of is that part of Europe. I'm not thinking about America when I'm going around to these stone chambers and structures and everything over New England. I'm thinking about the origin really of that, which I believe was in UK and Ireland.
Right.
Yes. I love that, Dave. And it does. It makes sense, doesn't it? Really.
Oh, absolutely, man. And you walk through the woods, and like you said, Robby, it's a very, very mystical place, and up in Maine as well. Man, there's some places that are downright creepy.
Oh,
and I don't go looking for trouble anymore. And every time if I go in a place that I know is going to be challenging spiritually, I do actually say a formal prayer. And I don't pray formally a lot. Everything that I do, I try to be in the present 24/7 as much as I can. That's the prayer to me, is that when you're focusing and you're putting good intention out everywhere you go. But when I go into some of these places, now it's pretty scary. And there's one place, oh man, you probably would know, Robby, more than me, but I want to say it's around Exeter, New Hampshire, maybe. And there's a road that goes between two of the larger towns down there. And when I was through there, man, I think it was the end of winter or maybe the fall or something, but all the leaves had many deciduous trees, of course, in the northeast of the United States. Going through that area, all I could think about were witches. Yeah. And I wasn't thinking that. Yeah. It just pops into my head because I'm going through the land. And whatever happens there, I can usually pull some of that energy or information, because I believe that events are imprinted on the land and not necessarily, actually, technically, I believe it's all happening at the same time. It's just you're in a different dimensional frequency, and that's all quantum physics, but I believe that's how it works. So I just want to try to.
Like a waveform.
I say it again, Robby.
stretched, like time stretched out as like a waveform.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good
Yeah.
explanation.
Yeah.
But we live in such a limited perspective that we can't perceive a lot of what's out there. And my interest is trying to put things back together. And if people identify with things that I would consider to be, lower energy forms or things that lower consciousness beings would be doing, I'm not ever saying people can't do that. All I'm saying is we need some better organization in the spiritual realms on this planet, because you shouldn't have to look behind your back for like ghosts and stuff when you're just on a walk through the woods trying to enjoy your day.
Yeah.
And I was up in, I don't know if I told you this yet, General. I was up in Washington State for a while, and I did have a Bigfoot experience. Did we talk about this?
Really? I don't recall we have, mate. You have told me a few things, like in strange places, like especially the last kind of tour what you did. He's told me about some places where you, like you just mentioned, you felt uneasy. You mentioned that, but I don't recall Bigfoot, mate. But I am intrigued, Dave.
Okay.
Please.
Now I had not had a Bigfoot experience before. This is the only one I've had, and I actually went up through. Where was I going? I was going out to Mount St. Helens. I'm sure some of you guys know what that is. And
that's where
massive. Say it again,
Is
Joe.
that Mount St. Helens? Is that where Bat Squatch was allegedly seen?
Well, I know there's an ape cave over there. That's a well-known.
Oh, right.
So I've driven all the way up to Mount St. Helens and like hiked in a little bit and actually watched lava coming out and forming the new cone. And I've been all through that area, man. Yeah.
Oh man, Robby, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you feel anything strange? I'd like to hear what you thought about it.
Well, it's desolate, man, and just the fact that when the volcano exploded there last time, it like laid all the trees out, almost like whichever direction the blast hit the trees, they laid down. So and then you got all the new growth coming back, and but it's just very lot of birds and whatnot, but it's very like solemn out there.
That sounds so strange.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll tell you what's interesting. You probably remember this too, Robby, but on the way out there, I think there's one main entrance. There's a couple other side ones, but if you go up the main entrance, there's actually a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch museum. You remember that one, Robby?
Museum?
Man, I've been to so many of those museums up through the Northwest, man. It's it's hard to say. I mean, it was probably I want to say 15 years ago I was out there.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Anyway, I stopped there to talk with a guy, and he's got like his own vehicle. It's been decked out for like Bigfoot hunting. I mean, he's very serious about this. I think he's been on some TV shows too. I could find the name eventually if you guys want it, but I talked with him for a while. And of course, what I'm always looking for first is what is the energy of the land? Because again, and I always talk about this because you grow up in a certain area, and I think a lot of people assume that, like it's similar except there's palm trees, in the South and Florida and stuff versus being up in the Northeast. Well, it's a lot more than that. And it's a lot more than the angle of the sun. It's a lot more than everything. The planet it's gridded, it's energetically gridded, which may actually be a good segue into astrology. Talk about how that works and how it functions. But it's actually been designed. And that's the whole point with astrology, is that it's not, and I don't really think a lot of people have problems with how I do astrology, but it's not about like Dave doing black magic or, how can you be pro Christ and do astrology? Well, watch my show, man. That's all I have to say to people. You want to see the explanation, you have to put your biases aside and you have to listen to the information.
Well,
okay. And if you're scared of the information, that's a different issue. But if you look at it head on, I think you'd be very, very fascinated by how accurate it is. So
even the Bible
in any case,
even the Bible says there'll be signs in the stars, So I think there's a very, very positive kind of outlook in regard to astrology, in regard to the ancient religions. You know.
Oh,
I
absolutely,
agree
man.
with you.
Go ahead, Jen.
No, I agree. Sorry about that, Dave.
Okay, so back to St. Helens for a second. So as I was at this museum, and the idea is that his headquarters is pretty close to where he's going to go out, I think, doing his research. And so I felt totally fine. I was looking. I mean, he has a massive statue, like a 40, 50-foot statue of a Sasquatch standing right there in the parking lot,
Really?
walking around. What is it, John?
The chainsaw statues, in the northwest and in the northeast both. You get those giant chainsaw where they'll take a whole tree and just turn it into a Sasquatch or a bear or
Oh, is that what it is? Like,
yeah, but the
that's,
northwest,
smart.
specifically the northwest, you see those Bigfoot statues, those Sasquatch statues frequently.
That's wild, mate.
And that's the thing is too, when you're driving across different areas, pay attention to what is in the public consciousness in that area.
Right.
I've been through I've been through places where you never would have thought. I'm not going to say specifically where this is, but I will say it's in Texas, and it's like a very wealthy area. This is actually, I've got two examples of this, and I'll give both of them because I think it's important for people to understand how the universe, I'm not going to say delivers karma, but it gives people what they need and what they deserve. And so a lot of times what happens is you have a city that's established, and then as the city grows, you get people who made all of their money in the city, and they start moving out to the suburbs. Well, who did an energy reading of the suburbs? The city, usually a city is founded in a place that has decent, fairly good energy, so that things, you don't want to found a big civilization somewhere where that's difficult to live. That's stupid.
Right.
So as people make a lot of money and they move out into the suburbs, I think people are assuming, oh yeah, it's just, it's like 20 miles from the city, so I'm going to do it and it's going to be good because I can get into the city. Then I can get to the outskirts where it's quiet and the air is cleaner. Okay, well, how about the question, which is the one that I always want to know the most, is what is going on with the land? Do you know what happened there? You have any clue what's going on? Of course they don't. They just want to be close to the city for their commute. So there's one area in particular in Texas. I did a lot of hiking on the trails around this area, and this is the weirdest thing, man. This is one of the most wealthy communities in Texas. $1 million houses everywhere. Just the most exotic cars just driving down the street everywhere. And so I'm like, okay, this is where people are living. They did a nice job with the town. I think it's great. I don't like the attitudes, that you get when you talk to people. Because my thing is I don't care if you make $1 billion, you got to be civil with me, or I'm not going to talk to you for any reason.
Yeah, mate. That's how it should be as well, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We got a backwards world right now.
Mate.
But,
yeah.
So anyway, I'm going through this trail, and I'm starting to look down, and I'm not kidding, man. I'm seeing fairy houses everywhere. I'm seeing these little tiny houses people built into trees, and they're miniature size, and a lot of them are towards the ground, and people are leaving like little offerings and stuff. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? This is a very Christian community.
Yeah.
It's a very, very weird paradox that's happening.
I've seen that in a couple places around the country, man.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah. Colorado, and out, Oregon way. Yeah.
Okay, you're saying fairy houses, right?
Yeah, fairy house. People would build fairy houses in the woods in certain areas, and like you're saying, leave little offerings and put little things inside the houses for them. And it's I think it's an interesting little phenomenon, man. So down in Texas, there's one of these kind of places.
Yeah. Oh yeah, in Texas. And just to wrap up the statement, is that I think it's a really good dichotomy that's going to quietly, energetically force people who believe things are one way and only one way to grapple with even though they don't realize probably, maybe when they're sleeping, they have a weird dream or they go on a hike and something weird happens to them. Okay, so the point is that the point is, and I'm going to try hard not to offend anyone. Like I said, I'm very pro Christ, but that doesn't mean that I'm not pro Krishna or I'm not pro Buddha. It's a very large world, and we have many different disciplines, many different spiritual teachings. And the thing that I care about the most, again, like I just said, is that people treat me civilly, I treat you civilly, and we're good. Okay, if you see someone that needs something and you have the ability to help, you help them.
You help them, yeah.
But I've got friends that are maybe not. I'm not going to say that they're pagan. I would say they're pre-pagan, which is a very interesting topic. It goes into the Orlinda book, talking about maybe what was happening in Europe before paganism came in. And again, I'm not anti. I'm okay with paganism. I know where I'm going when I leave the earth, and that's my interest. And I'm also interested in helping other people. But when I say where I'm going, I mean that I don't care what the local religion is, the local culture. Like, be a good person, okay? Because that's what people remember at the end of the day. They don't remember, and they don't. For quite frankly, a lot of people don't care if you worship Buddha or if you worship Christ or if you worship Krishna. They care about, were you an asshole when I was behind you in the line and I was waiting? Did you smile at me? Did you shake my hand?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my little rant for tonight, because it's just so preposterous to me that we have people they're so strong in their religion and missing the entire point about what actually is the teaching, or my belief behind all religions, which is you got to get your heart straight, man. You got to treat people well. Doesn't matter, if you believe your God's going to do all the work for you, fine, but I don't believe that, because you just hurt me. I believe what you just did.
Well said, mate.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let me just give one more, and then I want to hear what you guys think about this stuff. But that was in Texas. The other one is in Massachusetts, and actually this is somewhere in it's actually pretty close to Bridgewater Triangle. It may be in the Triangle. I think it's actually in the Triangle. But there were very, very, very violent wars that happened sort of in the 1600s, at the beginning of the colonization of New England, between the natives and the obviously people from Europe. And so a lot of death happened, and there's some areas that have really strongly been imprinted with that. And one of them in particular was, I believe, the cave. I think it's called Metacomet's Cave, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you've been there, Robby. Very, very interesting. Metacomet was
Metacomet, did you say, Dave? Sorry.
Metacomet. He was the leader of the local tribe over there, and he later became known as King Philip. Actually, it's a name he took to honor the Europeans. And so there was, when they were pursuing him, trying to take his life, trying to basically the same story, trying to take the land, force the natives out, which is the story of America, really, a lot of it, unfortunately. He basically hid in a cave in an area that's full of very large rocks. There's very large monoliths kind of everywhere. And this is the best, for me, this is the best part of all, is that it's in a very wealthy neighborhood. And so you actually have to, it's not very clear where you're supposed to park. I get into this neighborhood, I'm like, man, I don't want to get in anyone's way. I'm trying to be respectful. And then I see the sign, like, this is the trail to the cave. And then I just parked on the side. I tried to pull off the road as much as I could. And I go into the woods, man, and I find the cave. And fairly positive energy there. The land was fairly happy. But I'm looking through the forest, and I see like a multi-million-dollar house right up on the hill. I can see it like right next to the cave. And so the thing is, for me, is that you can't escape the land. And I think that we're all we all end up where we're supposed to be. And if you have made ridiculous amounts of money and you're only interested in yourself and your family and you don't care about anyone else, that's a problem. There's no way around that for me. We're supposed to care about everyone. And if someone's struggling, or they're struggling to understand something, or they just need a hug, man, or whatever it is they need, like, we have the power to do that as humans. You don't have to wait for your savior to go out and be nice to your neighbor. Okay, enough of that. I'm interested in what you guys have to say about this.
Yeah, so Now, as far as just the general Earth grid itself, as far as how energies move, the caloric fields of the planet itself, how much do you think that relates to the astral, as far as the heavens in connection to the Earth?
So this is probably really the core of astrology. Thanks for bringing that up, Robby.
Question, that mate. Good question, Robby.
The when you do a birth chart, and I do, just so you guys know, and if anyone listening who hasn't heard any of my work, I do tropical astrology, which is also called Western astrology. It was developed really in ancient Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia. I think it's kind of a blending of everything that kind of happened, what we have today, but certainly that part of the world. And the glyphs come from Mesopotamia that we use. For instance, when you look at the sign of Aries, you're going to see it. It looks like a straight. It looks kind of like a palm tree almost. It's like a straight line with the two tops coming down at the top of it.
Right.
Which is supposed to look like a ram's head. It's supposed to be the horns of the ram with the nose coming out down the bottom there. So in any case, when you do a chart, you need to have a few different things. You need to have the time of birth. You need to have the year of birth. And you need to have the location of birth.
Right.
And if you don't have any of those things, you're not going to get a full chart. So the location is, I fully believe, and based on what I've seen, the research I've done, on the field research, just paying attention to large amounts of data, trying to understand, again, the whole point for me is to try to understand what is happening on this planet. And in particular, why is it so degenerated? Like, why have we fallen so far? How on earth did that happen? And then the other part of that is kind of the side story of that is who let that happen? And that's like my favorite topic right there, because when you talk about one of the things I learned early on, maybe 10, 15 years ago, is that someone says God, it doesn't necessarily mean the same God.
No.
And I ask people to define their God for me. Tell me what he does. Tell me how he treats people.
Yeah.
And
Old Testament.
also, in regard to that, on a certain level, couldn't it have been ourselves that let ourselves fall?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I actually believe that. At least 90%, I believe exactly what you just said, Robby. And I think a lot of the ancient gods are here currently in different forms,
right,
and being forced to grapple with the decisions we made. But when you look around you, it's like, who the hell let it? We did. Like thousands of years ago, we probably are the ones that did it. But this is what's difficult, man, is that there's a very large alien component to this. It's not everyone's favorite topic. I don't love it, but I've been forced to do that, and I'm happy to take that burden, and I try to act responsibly with it. But I'll just say this really quickly: is that one of the ladies that I asked to do some channeling for me back a few years ago when I was working on Oak Island. I actually, maybe she didn't channel for me. No, you know what it was? She was on a different podcast, and I was in the chat room, and I actually asked her a question from the chat room, and I said, just please, because man, I really, really value information that comes through channeling. It's a very specific kind of thing. It's weird because people I've worked with who are channelers, they can't interpret the information that comes in. So after this, and they tell me that, they're like, after the session, I'm not going to remember anything I just said. So please, we're going to record it, take notes. I'm not going to be able to give you feedback because I don't know what it is. All I know is I received it. And so one lady asked her, just please tell me who created Oak Island and what is this about, but specifically who's responsible for Oak Island. I may have said who is responsible for making Oak Island look the way it does, because it does not look like a normal island. It's very strange shape, very, very strange. And she paused. I think she got the information pretty fast, but she paused for a second. And then she said, "You're not going to like this." And I said, "It's fine with me. I can deal with it." She said, "It was the aliens." She said the aliens created the island. And I said, "Well, I already knew that, but I didn't tell her that." But wait, one more thing, General, really quickly. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, of course, mate.
Okay. All right. I think Jen just popped out. That's not the full story. I think that's sort of like the original story. But I've had a couple visions probably. I've asked other people. I also think there was a fair amount, if not a lot, probably a lot, I would say, of what you would refer to these days is possible black magic and happening in not just Mahone Bay, but I'm not going to say a lot about this. Please, people who are interested in this topic, just have a look at Boston Harbor, please, and have a look at the shape of those islands. It's a very similar thing going on, and we know that in the Northeast, in particular, well, New England, but also, I mean, New Brunswick, big time, in through Nova Scotia as well.
Yeah,
there's a lot of witch lore, and there's a reason for that. And I believe Europe was connected to North America, maybe not so long ago. It may have been in a different dimension, which again is a stretch for some people. But according to what I've seen with quantum physics, man, everything is open. Everything's possible in quantum physics, and that's not a cop-out. I just know that to be true.
all that could be imagined by the minds of men.
It's possible, right?
Yeah, it's.
But I was gonna say, as far as the channeling, yeah, I used to know someone long time ago that channeled, and they would grab your hands and basically go into another mind space, and when they came back, they couldn't remember anything that they said.
It's wild, isn't it, Robby?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Because I'm like, man, what are you talking about? You can't remember.
Yeah. But I think that's part of the gift. This woman I knew, she was born with a veil over her face. She was a Southern Baptist, and I went and hung out at her church with her, and we talked a lot. And she gave me a few channeling sessions. And one of them, she even got to the point. So before I met my wife, she told me I was going to meet a redhead and we were going to have one kid, and that I would travel extensively throughout my life, which all have come true since she told me that. And then she asked me if I wanted to know how I was going to die. And I was like, no, thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you can have, and I've been watching some shows recently that talk a lot about this. It's a really, really interesting topic. Is that, and it's a really, really, maybe it's the central question in spirituality for me, is this question about free will. And actually, I'd really like to hear, Jen too. I'd like to hear what you have to say about free will. But I wanted to say, to kick it off with what I was thinking about, is that a lot of people assume, especially people maybe who are not into the spirituality component of life as much, they're like, yeah, sure, I have free will. I'm going to decide to go to the store today and do this and whatever. But what's amazing about it is that what I've seen with my life, I'll just speak for myself, is that I always end up being where I'm supposed to be. And it's a weird thing, because I can look back when something happens, I don't necessarily know why it just happened. But since I would say over the past 10 years, I've developed a full trust in life events and just trying to learn what that is supposed to mean. Then when I look back 6 months and I see exactly why that happened, exactly, and it's so beautiful and it's so perfect, and I'm so thankful when I can see why it happened, and you develop a trust.
Oh, yeah.
But the important part is, again, for me, is to have your heart set right, so that when you're making decisions, you're doing it from the right place. And if that happens, man, you will be taken care of. I guarantee you will be taken care of, and you'll be pleased with the results. It may not be easy. A lot of times it's not going to be easy. It's going to push you for understanding. So in any case, the free will topic, though, is that the question is how much free will do we actually have? And again, it's another application of astrology. One of the more important ones is the fact that if you look at your birth chart, and I didn't finish what I was talking about with that, but with the birth chart, what that is the conditions in the sky at the moment that you're born. And so it basically, what happens is the sky is copied. The sky plus all of the energies in the sky, all the orientations of those energies in the sky, is copied verbatim into your physical body and into your mental structure of your mind. And so when you're in it, it depends 100% also where you're born on the planet, because that gives you the angle that those bodies in the sky are at to the exact spot that you're born. and then you end up with degrees, and then you can talk about the aspects, which are things like trines and sextiles and things that give you other qualities to your chart and to your personality and to your character and all these things. So when you look at that and you see, wow, this is like 99.9% accurate, and it's pretty scary. How does that happen? And then what that says also is that, like, for instance, I'm a Pisces. I can't choose to not be a Pisces. You cannot choose that. But this is what's brilliant about this. And this is one of the things that separates me from other astrologers, the way I teach this. I teach, and I think we talked about this general before, but I teach it based on cosmology. You have to understand cosmology. And that one of the brilliant things about, we're going to talk a little about the east and west of the planet and how they kind of, the commonalities and differences. I'd be really interested to go into that in a few minutes. But the thing is that you have teachings that actually bridge cultures. And that's, for me, that's sort of like the original Earth teaching. And that's where I focus my time and energy, because I don't really care. I do care. That's not the right word. But I'm looking for, I think what it is that when the Earth was created, you had one system, one correct system of knowledge. It may have been separated dimensionally, which is fine. You have certain aspects available to you at higher dimensions. You won't see them in the lower ones. But that's still a very sound plan, and it's functional and logical. And there's justice and all this stuff. Well, when you as a culture decide to take one part of the truth and make a religion out of it, because you like it or it works, quote unquote, it works for you, that's fine. But then when you have someone else coming in and they're trying to reach across the aisle and be like, well, can I suggest adding something, or not adding something to religion, but let me just show you how someone who was born in America thinks about the same topic that you're talking about. And at the end of the day, if the other person is very set in their, and they have faith in their belief system and all this stuff, then no matter what you say, it's not going to bother them, because they already know who they are. They already know what they want to do. The problem is that a lot of people, in fact, probably most people, don't really fully know who they are, and anything unknown really scares them. So I think that's what's happened with the world, is that you have these cultures, not just religions, but cultures, styles of languages, certainly styles of interacting with each other. And it's a part of sort of the original system. But they just did this hyper focus, and they made everything about that in that little fragment. But you're missing 99% of the other pieces. So what I try to do is put all pieces together. In any case, cosmology, when I do astrology, it's based on the ancient cosmology. And this is definitely not the topic for today, but all of the ancient models were based on a flat Earth. I did a flat Earth presentation if people want to see the specifics about that, but just for the sake of tonight, all the cosmologies are based on a flat Earth. Earth at the center does not move, and above it are the vaults of heaven, and then below it are also the vaults of hell, which are complementary to each other. And that actually creates the tree of the cosmic axis, the tree of life. You can call it Yggdrasil in Norse mythology. It's all the same. Mount Meru, it's all the same.
Right.
And so what that is that's trying to teach you about how dimensions are structured. Is trying to teach you about how your body is structured, because they're identical. And then when you understand that, you can understand that if you understand that really well, then I think it's appropriate to move into what I would call ascension teachings. And the ascension teachings are really what people like Jesus and Buddha and Krishna were actually driving at, is that we all have the power within to ascend. And it's not a metaphorical ascension. We're talking about a physiological change in your biology, in your structures, that allows you to move into your light body. That's the teaching of the ages. And it's not a metaphor. It's not a fairy tale. It's actually science. If you want to find that science, you go over to the East. The only places that I've ever found it written verbatim, I mean, there's still little pieces, it's hard to put it all together, is from, I would say, India and China. I've never seen it from anywhere else, including Egypt. I think that's been probably taken and hidden from the Egyptian traditions. But certainly when I talk to Native Americans in North America, I don't hear anything about this. And it makes you question, where did sort of these teachings begin? I think it probably began with Mu, which is, in my belief, different from Lemuria. Lemuria for me is in the Indian Ocean, and Mu, supercontinent Mu, is in the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
I've had people from the Philippines I have a lot of friends from the Philippines, man. For some reason, they really like me. Probably because I'm a nice person and I listen and I care, and maybe that's not a common thing in our world today. But anyway, one girl made a joke with me one time, and she said, yeah, she said, I live on the happy island. And I'm thinking, I'm like, what? Like, the thing is about Filipino people is they're generally very happy and very kind and friendly. And again, I look to the land for that, and I want to know why there? Why not in Morocco, where people naturally like that? Why do I find those people over there? And then I think about traditions, and I think about what the Chinese used to teach and hopefully still do, and people from ancient India. And then you start to think about, well, I mean, the Philippines is kind of pushing into the Mu territory, maybe even been part of Mu, talking about when people first came to the earth, they came in light bodies and there was no dysfunction. Everything was perfected. Anyway, the last point I want to make with this is that when I do astrology, astrology is actually, don't get me wrong, it's a very high teaching. It's very scientific and in fact, it's all mathematics. That's all it is mathematics with meaning attached to it. And so when you look at the model of the cosmic axis, you're seeing in what's called the eighth sphere, it's called the fixed stars, and that's where all the constellations are, and it's of the zodiac, 12 constellations. It's ruled by Uranus. And what's interesting about that is that everything below that, that's in the eighth sphere, and all the spheres below that, 1 through 7, each feature one of the 7 traditional planets, starting with the moon is considered a planet in traditional astrology, all the way up to Saturn. And so the
eighth sphere would be what, Saturn?
The eighth sphere is Uranus. The seventh sphere is Saturn.
Saturn, there you go.
And the seventh sphere, there's many reasons I know that. One of them is because Saturn's in your body is called the seventh chakra.
Mm-hmm.
And the seventh chakra is also called the crown of your head, which is Cronus, which is Saturn.
Right.
Okay, father time, Cronus, is that when your energy is below the seventh chakra, you're subject to time.
Right.
And that's kind of, time is, I mean, for me, it's kind of like one of the curses, is that you're going to age, you're going to die, your energy is going to drop, and you're going to be part of the karma cycle. Well, guess what happens? When you get above the eighth sphere, I teach a 10 sphere system. Some other people, they teach 12 or 14, or if I've seen 15, but every indication for me is that it's a 10 sphere system. The ninth sphere is Neptune, and it's called the crystalline sea. And there's actually references in the book of Enoch to the crystalline sea. And he describes it as essentially it's described like a shimmering force field. He said it looks like water, but it's not water, but it shimmers like water. And what that does is that makes sure that our solar system is confined. It becomes, it's a separate entity, with its own rules and own laws.
Right.
When you get to the 10th sphere, that's freedom. You are outside of our solar system in the 10th sphere. And I think that's also, if you want to know what's in the 10th sphere, people traditionally, it's called Pluto. But I think it's actually Nibiru. And when we had that discovery a few years back, talking about planet X, well, what is X? It's also 10. X means 10.
Right.
And that's where it belongs, in that 10th sphere, man. It doesn't come around a lot, but when it does, everything's going to shift.
So how much does your system line up with Kabbalah and the Tree of Life?
Well, the Kabbalah system, I would say make a condition on this, but the way it's taught today is fairly recent. It's a sort of a medieval system that developed, and it's the esoteric Jewish tradition, essentially.
Right.
It has very good tenets to it, and in fact, it has some things that I don't see other places, which again is so thankful for that, because I haven't found it other places.
Freemasonic as well.
Sorry, Robby, go.
Freemasonic as well.
Oh, about how that fit. Oh, Kabbalah, you're saying?
As far as Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, yeah.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with that. But you'll notice that there's 10 Sephiroth. Why 10? Why not 12? Because it's the same 10 that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's it's slightly different, not much, but when you talk about ancient Egypt, you've got the Ennead, which were the 9 main gods, the original 9 main gods from the Egyptian tradition. And then guess who also has something similar? The Mayans. They have the 9.
Yep.
So the 9 are the moon through Neptune. Those are your 9.
Right.
And then the 10th is the mystery planet, which is
And-
mystery planet is basically, one way is to think about it, it's our connection to the rest of the galaxy, and then the larger universe after that.
Right.
But here's the point that I want to make is that people, if you want to spend all your time doing astrology, no problem. If you're doing it correctly, it's a wonderful tool to have. But there's actually teachings that are above astrology. And for all the people who don't like astrology, that's really where you want to be focusing, was what I would say. Unfortunately, to do that, you're going to have to get into Kundalini. And actually, I want to hear what Jen has to say about Kundalini, because it's probably the most important topic.
Okay.
Jen, you still?
Yeah, no, I'm here. Okay, so this is like quite a big topic. Well, Robby, Robby knows that I am quite good at medieval Kabbalah. I mean, Lee also knows this because I did an 11-part series on medieval Kabbalah compared with the Mahavijaya system, which is from Nepal. And obviously, I'm a Tantric Buddhist, so but we don't use the same chakra system. Like when you're using the planetary attributions to the chakras, actually in the older system from the 8th century, from the Guhya Samaja text, we do not assign the planets to the chakras. I'm not saying that it's wrong. It obviously comes from the Nath yogis, the 9 yogis started by Matsendranath, who was a tantric. He passed on his teachings that would later became Hatha Yoga, and that system is a 7 chakra system. We understand it more in the traditional way, which is more a Jain system. So we only have 5 chakras, and they are not assigned the traditional deities that are assigned in yoga, and they aren't assigned the traditional syllables either. We have like a different colors, different attributions, different kind of way of understanding it. And because in one thing I will say, Dave, is that when you said the Cronus and like the crown chakra, for me, because we make the allowance for the time king or the Mahakal, he is not like he is a crystallizing force, but he's not the primary governing force, especially in tantric Buddhism. But this is also true of like Shakta Tantra or Goddess Tantra from Nepal and Bengal. We consider him to be an agent of Dharma. So he kind of just like Shani, Saturn. He's the lord of karma, but he is a devotee of the greater time king. So he
I
kind of,
agree.
yeah, exactly. So he positions us to receive our karma and to live it out through our life, but he is also there to help us overcome the obstacles that we have to our Dharma practice. So that's why he wears like an elephant skin. One of the reasons is because he overcomes the Asura, the elephant Asura of the paths, just like the Koala tree has the 22 paths. Well, Ganesh has 22 forms. He actually has 33 forms, but 11 of them are secret. So there's 22 outer forms. So it's very similar. Like you can easily map this kind of Himalayan tradition onto the more medieval Kabbalah. Lee knows that I really like Cordovero. I read, I've finished Tomer Deborah now, but when I was doing the series, I was going through the date palms, Pardes. So I'm more familiar with the medieval stuff, and then obviously the Yetziratic astrology is quite different than the more Western astrology that is used now. So I am more of a medievalist in that what I'm familiar with, and so I have a less like Hermetic Kabbalah background. But from the way I understand it, so I will say that we do have free will, and the planets are considered to be more archonic in nature from a Dharma perspective. However, it doesn't mean that they are like the primary archons. They are just kind of there, and they influence and affect human life. However, there are methods and remedies to overcome sort of the obstacles that they put in our way, just like there are remedies and practices to overcome like the greater archons as well. So I don't know if that answers your question. I know I meandered a little bit, but it's a big question.
No,
So
this is what I'm talking about right here, guys. That's brilliant, Jen, and that's the most intelligent response that I've heard in probably years. So thank you for that. I
Nice one,
agree,
Timothy.
and I think it's what I would say is they're sort of like the local archons. They're called the gatekeepers. They're called the wanderers in astrology. You know, they
Right.
guard the chakra gates and they guard the energy gates and stuff. And I'm not going to say they're inert, but they will respond to you, and they're beneficent, and they have aspects of beneficence and maleficence at the same time, which is one of the things. For instance, when I talk about Saturn, I really like to make sure people understand he's not always bad.
Right.
You know, this is a 50-50 split. If you want to talk about who's the disciplinarian, who's the one that'll get it done no matter what, look to Saturn. He's the one. You know, he doesn't want a circus. He doesn't want frills, man. He wants to get it done, and you get out of his way, and nothing extra is going to be added. You know.
I agree with you totally, Dave. I think I always try and make this point that Saturn is really not like, yes, many Agrippa said the great malefic, all the texts, even in Jyotish and Vedic astrology, he is considered malefic, but he's only considered malefic because he makes us enact out our karma in this life. So if we have negative karma from our past life, of course it's going to be somewhat negative. I personally have a strong Shani in my chart, so he doesn't really. That's not the planet that affects me. Now, do I have other planets that affect me? Yes, but I agree with you, Dave, that it's really important. People should really understand that, and I also think that there is this other layer which is kind of esoteric, perhaps, but when we call, and I brought this up with Robby, I think when Robby was on End of Days, is that I think that when we call the planets their kind of Greek Olympic names, I think that we are actually invoking those sort of archons, those kind of limited consciousness powers. Like when we call it Saturn or Kronos, I think that it's very much embodied in the Greek story that those gods were very petty. They're kind of low consciousness gods. They're not like the higher pristine consciousness kind of like they're not what we strive for in Dharma. Obviously, we strive for a much, much higher. Like the planets are just even the most minor of the deities. They're just the grahas, the grasping planets. Yes, they are useful for magic. You know, we need to understand them. We need to understand astrology. But I don't know. I'll hear what Robby has to say. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to meander, but I think that there's something there with that, like to understand the names and stuff.
And I think that like what you're saying is they are as far as the movable heavens, they are still within this realm, and as far as the astral body looking to ascend above and beyond, like you're saying, once you get to that top chakra, or top sphere, you're essentially elevated into the next realm outside of the purview and scope of these energetic forces.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I totally agree with that.
Love that, Robby. Well said, mate.
You guys are all brilliant. Seriously, this is probably the best thing that's going up on YouTube today. I feel very strongly about that.
Thanks, one, mate. Yeah, it's fascinating, mate.
So
My mind's pickled.
Yeah, I have a question. Now the difference between tropical and sidereal, there's a difference in the number of signs. There's a difference in how they move. I would like to know more about that.
Okay, you want me to answer that, Robby?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so first of all, they all come out of the same original teaching. They're both valid. So, if I hear someone talking about their tropical astrologer and they say the Vedic is crap, no, man, it's not. They're both correct. You got to get the right person doing it. That's the challenge in today's world. A lot of people claim. For a lot of people, it's a fad. It's not. It's science. It's mathematics. I mean, you think if people think tropical astrology is difficult math, man, go over to Vedic astrology. It's ridiculous. I mean, the Vedic time period, the Vedic cycles, or the Veda cycle is 4.32 million years. That's one cycle.
Right.
They have 33 million gods in Hinduism. I mean, come on, We need to give in the West, we need to give respect where it's due. These are not recent civilizations. This is not recent development of spirituality or sciences or anything else that happens in culture. Right. It's very, 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 very old. So anyway, the thing about this is that, like I was saying, it's when I think about the original creation of Earth, I think about one system is trying to figure out what that system is. So again, they're both valid, both of the systems of astrology, and also Chinese astrology is also valid. I might as well put that in there too, because it's based on the moon and it's based on the year you're born. If it's not valid, then how come when I look at the year I was born, it's 100% accurate? How that's one of those things as a scientist that you have to respect the data. It doesn't matter if I like it or not. I happen to be fine with it, but it's not about, that's what we need to get past in terms of higher consciousness. It's not about if you like it, it's about, is it true? And if it involves karma, like you're talking about too, Jen, of course, the enforcer of karma, you're going to think is maleficent because they want you to make up for what you did. They want you to clear your slate. So they're going to appear evil, but guess what happens? It must have been about 10 years ago. I was finally able to say, now please give me what I deserve. And if I'm missing something, I said, this is one of my prayers to the universe. And I said, if I'm missing something, then please help me understand what I have to understand. And I have not been let down one day in the past 10 years, actually more than 10 years, I'd say about 15 years, because my prayer is for the truth. Even if I look awful, and I don't think I do anymore, but it's been a long process. But even if I look terrible, I still want to know what I did wrong. I want to know how to correct it. I want to know how to help others correctly. I want to know how to make karma disappear. And so when that's the prayer, then you get information that's going to help you to get in that direction. So with tropical astrology, it's based on the movement of the planets. It's based on what's called the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun over the course of a year. And when you look at what's important to understand, the best way to conceptualize this is that tropical astrology, also called Western astrology, is it's based on the planets. And so the planets in cosmology are closer to the Earth than the zodiac in the traditional model. The zodiac exists in, like I was saying, the eighth sphere. So when you're talking about immediate / short-term influence, I would encourage people to look at the tropical system first. If you want to see larger long-term trends, I would go over to Vedic, because that's talking about energy influences that are physically, and I would say also dimensionally, further away from the Earth, because you're moving up the tree, but you're also moving down the tree, because under the Earth is a complementary sphere as well. So you got to think about both directions. So they're both accurate, but like I'm saying, if you want to look at the short term and the stronger trends, I would look with the planets. I'd go tropical. But actually, if you really want to understand, look at both of them, and then also go to Chinese. You want to see, man, in the pursuit for understanding, you want to get as many perspectives as possible. And apparently it's a very rare trait these days, because I'm always looking. I get it. There's very few things I get excited about, but one of the things is new information that I can apply. And I have like this a large puzzle, and I'm adding pieces all the time. And sometimes they come from the strangest sources. Sometimes they come from, someone who was just incarcerated last week. It could have been from anyone. Right. But when someone comes into my path, man, I respect them. I try to honor them, and I listen. And I want to know, and also if I can help them, I want to know if there's a way to do that. So by focusing on the heart, it's always back to the heart. And of course, the heart is the center of all traditions. It's the center of the body. The word earth is the same letters as the word heart. And that's showing you again, the ancient cosmology. The heart is in the middle. Guess what else is in the middle of the earth? It's the same word. It's actually what it is it's a torus field around the earth, with the earth or the heart as the center of the solar system. And then, that's where everything kind of comes together at the center.
And flows into the higher, back to the lower, like a toward field.
Oh, absolutely, man. Which also looks like an apple. And that's also very important when you talk about some of the origin stories. Actually, me and Robby, we did, remember that show, Robby? when I had you on my
The
show.
Garden of Eden.
Yeah, we did a phenomenal one on that,
That was a fun one.
talking about all the meanings behind the symbolism in the garden and, you know, where it might have been and all these kinds of things. I'd highly recommend people are interested, go on my YouTube channel. Check that out under Dave Petrella 12. It's well
So
worth watching.
Dave, have you seen recently, I guess there was some recently declassified files on that eye over there in Africa that the military had been over there and actually gone over the whole thing with like LiDAR and mapped the whole thing out and everything. But there's still a whole bunch of it that's still classified. They only released parts of it.
I saw something, someone posted a few things on Instagram, Robby, but what's the new information that came out?
Yeah, I didn't really have a chance to look. I did kind of skim over it a little bit, but it seemed like they went and basically mapped the whole thing out in like S shape, kind of one way, like horizontally, and then S shape vertically, and kind of went over. And but yeah, apparently at one point it was a big interest to the military in regard to what that land anomaly kind of was.
Man, I have something really fascinating to add to that, Robby, and I just love talking to you guys. It's always what we need at the right time. I just watched a movie, Disney movie actually, called Atlantis: The Lost Kingdom. Excuse me.
Oh yeah,
Atlantis: The Lost Kingdom. You know that one, Robby?
yeah. My daughter, we watched it when she was younger.
Oh, nice, man. Very nice. Okay, so in this movie, and you know, when I talk about movies, I actually had a friend a couple of years ago really got me focusing on why movies come out when they come out and knowing what to look for, because it's all part of a plan to, in my opinion, to help humanity move towards higher levels of consciousness. Everything you see in the media, everything, people you meet. And so when I look at movies now, there's something else I'm trying to find. I look at the year the movie was created. I look at the people that created it. You know, I do research on the people that did it. And you're going to pull out the information you need. I guarantee it. You just have to get focused. You have to have a single point of thought in your head. That took me probably 10 years to be able to do that. I don't have these thoughts coming in, errant thoughts everywhere, flooding my, my vision. You have to clear the head, then you get information. So you remember this, Robby. You guys remember this, but at the very beginning, when the tsunami covers the island, there's actually something that happens that I've never seen before in any depiction. And again, this could be artistic license. I don't think it is, based on what I felt when I saw it. Because when I see something visually, it really helps me to place it even better, usually. And so I have other reference points for it. But what happens is there's actually a force field or an energy dome that covers the entire city. So that when the water hits it, it actually is covered with a sort of a crystalline force field or a dome over the city, protecting the city.
Right.
Okay,
yeah,
so
like a firmament type kind of thing, like a protection.
Exactly.
Yeah, and water comes all, and then they're basically underwater, very much like the old systems, under the firmament or under the dome. Yeah, yeah. And it's powered by that crystal that powers everything. Kind of almost like a vril kind of energy.
Oh,
definitely. All right, so think about this. So and then later in the end, it's actually covered by lava, and it survives that as well because of the force field. Okay, so think about this in relation to the Eye of the Sahara now. What if that is actually what happened, is that it created a force field over itself, and then when the sand in I believe the Sahara was all from the flood events, tsunami events. The whole area used to be lush. We know that geologically as well. All kinds of animals everywhere, and suddenly there's nothing there. Well, it's also it's right at such an important spot on the map. You have all the influence coming in from the Jerusalem area to the east. You have all the influence coming from Europe to the north. You're telling me there's never a civilization right around the south side of the Mediterranean? No, I don't think so.
It's a primo trading spot. Yeah, it's a primo trading spot, man.
Absolutely, man. All right, so what I was thinking is that you got this force field established so that when the water and the sand cover it, what ends up happening is it will form to the contours of that dome.
Right.
And then now suddenly you have a hardened feature on the top of that dome.
And it does have the rings, like the ringed islands, with the temple on each island, very much like the old kind of. But as far as the look of that eye, it does have ringed, like function.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I don't know if, yeah, we must have talked about it, Robbie. We must have, because it's something I wouldn't have passed over. But when I've talked about Atlantis in the past, one of the possibilities is that actually the entire Earth was Atlantis.
Right.
And when you look at the rings of, the extra lands outside of the ice wall and all that stuff, it's a very, if not identical pattern to how Atlantis was described by Plato with these concentric rings.
Yeah.
So some of the information I have is, and even when you go into the Aztec traditions and all the stuff over on the western side of the world in the Americas, is that Atlantis was probably a lot larger than we think. And some of it, I believe, was subducted underneath other continental plates and crusts and things. And some of it may be exposed now. Maybe the Azores is some of the original. I have no idea. But I believe that at the end of this period, I believe we'll have the answers. I think that humanity deserves the truth, and no matter how hard it is, the people who don't want the truth are probably the people who are working evil on a constant basis. But for everyone else, we're even a little bit mature. I mean, come on. Like, here's my big thing too. I'll just speak for myself. If I don't know what I did wrong, how can I fix that? Like when I asked the channeler, why am I down here? Like, why am I stuck on the earth at this time period? How's all that all working out? It's actually kind of funny. One of the things she said was, don't think of it that way. And then when I asked her to qualify that, of course she couldn't, because she's channeling.
Right.
So I never found out what that, meant from her perspective. But the thing is that, like, I'll speak for myself again. I can handle the truth because I'm willing to clear my karma. If it means, if I truly wronged someone, man, and I took away whatever from them that wasn't not mine to take away, man, I'll do 20 years of servitude and I'll close my mouth for the entire 20 years. And I will have tears coming down my eye every day. At this point in my spiritual development, if I can see I did something like that, man, I want to fix it.
Right.
And when the universe sees people that want to, and truly, and they're going to know, because it's in your heart, that lives in your heart.
Yeah. And that goes
universe
back
sees you want to do that, they're going to help you to clear your karma faster.
Right. And that goes back to Saturn as far as pushing you to clear. In the end, it may seem like it's a force that's against you, but in reality, in the long term, it's pushing you to clear your karma, like you were saying, or burn off that old cordwood so that the essence is more pure.
Oh, absolutely, man. We just have to accept it,
Well,
one of the things that I found very interesting is that when I talk about free will, sometimes I talk about free will as a function of, I often do this, but as a function of the cosmic axis. And what I mean by that is that and I want to actually mention something that Jen said too before I forget. One of the really helpful points or pieces of evidence for and by the way, I'm totally fine with the 5 chakra system. That's totally fine with me. I get that. It makes sense. But the 7 chakra system features the moon in the first chakra position. And of course, it's in the first position in astrology as well. It's the first heaven, and the first hell is the moon. So the moon, we know, regulates the menstrual cycle. Right. We know that the color of the first chakra is red. And so that's sitting right where it should be.
Right.
And that it's actually showing you physiological evidence to support that. You have, like, here's another example. You call someone yellow bellied. But why the hell is that? It's because yellow is the color of the 3rd chakra. And that's where it is. It's right, the solar plexus right there. So we just don't look hard enough. I'm saying as a society, not even close to doing that. One of my hopes is that, this is obviously what all of us love to do, and I'm happy to take on as much as I can handle. And one of my responsibilities is to make things more accessible for people and easier to understand. I'll do a lot of the legwork, but I just, I need people to listen to the information. That's a whole separate issue.
Well, and that gets back to the idea of free will in regard to the rolling and the unrolling of the scrolls, like, how much actual free will do we have as individuals? Because you may think you're doing something freely of your own bidding, but later in your years you look back and you see the influences and you see the time, and then you start looking at these astral aspects, and you have to wonder, like, where does free will begin and where does fate end? you know
I think a lot. That's a very good point, Robbie. I think a lot of us, um, you know, it, I think most of us have never felt the influence of being truly free. Now, the last time I can remember that was probably when I was 2 years old,
Mm,
and I barely had memories. But when you're at that level, man, the energy is so high in your body that you can actually push it out of the eighth chakra, and you can be free of astrology. Here's something
right.
really interesting: is that in your dreams, the ninth sphere, which is ruled by Neptune,
Right.
he's the ruler of dreams. And so when you are in the dream world, it's a very interesting thing. There's not really, at least in my experience, there's not really time.
Right.
You're not actually feeling the forces of the planets. You're actually free of that. And that's
Mm,
why dreams are so freeing, because you can be who you want. You can go where you want. You can stay for a little bit. You can leave. You can change your form. You can change the environment. You can do whatever. And the thing is that, like, when you enter that place in the dream world, it's well, certainly a temporary experience at that point, but the teachings of ascension will allow you to enter the dream world fully conscious.
right.
So in other words, you're not dreaming, you're actually doing those things. You can have
Well,
exactly what's in your heart,
right. And I
as long
find a
as it's
lot
not
of
going to break
times,
any rules.
yeah, I find a lot of times when you're in that essence of that state above time and space, I find myself frequently working problems out in that realm, you know.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, that's you'll get visions coming in. I've had I get a lot of information that comes to me while I'm awake. In fact, more,
Mhm.
believe it or not, more of it comes to me while I'm awake. And just sometimes I'm not asking for it. It's given to me when it's the right time, which
Right.
again is the cosmic cycle to me. And I am so appreciative, especially the past 5 years. The stuff that and I know, and this is why it was reserved for later. There's stuff that I could not have handled even 3 years ago. I wasn't ready for that. Once you've met with a certain amount of information, a certain amount of obstacles, and I believe the most important thing is that the universe knows it can trust you.
Mm,
Um, if I truly did it made an infraction, and it was something that really hurt people, man, without apart from things like self-protection, which is a separate topic to me, is that I give, and I don't have to give permission, but I give the universe permission to enforce morality. That's what I would say. So if I'm messed up, yeah,
mm,
I deserve the punishment, man.
right. Right.
And then if I don't learn the rule or the law or the reason, the cosmic law, let's say, why I was given that punishment, then guess what? I'm going to be given that punishment again. You don't move past it until you learn the reason why it keeps happening. And then once you learn it, then the universe will, in my belief, will allow you to move to the next step. I think that's how we develop, our spiritual understanding.
And
But
now within,
the people that are going to lead the future, in my opinion, in my belief, and my hope also is good-hearted people.
mm,
Again, we don't all have to be the same. I actually don't want us all to be the same. I love variety. But I'll tell you what does need to be there is we need to be good to each other. And we need to maybe look again at how we do economics and how we do money, the whole money system, and what's going on with that stuff. I believe if you contribute to society, you shouldn't have to worry about certain things, man.
yeah.
There's plenty of surplus out there for so much of what we need.
I mean, I think that's just a fundamental problem with the nature of the reality that we're in, But
Correct.
as far as the progressing stepwise within the system, I have seen some stuff in regard to um, having to incur incarnation through every sign of the zodiac, before you can exit.
I think that's probably true, Robbie, because I think it's a necessary component to having full understanding
Of all the
you-
juxtaposition of the whole.
Oh, absolutely. And the 13th sign is often referred to as Jesus or Christ.
Right. You
The
focus.
13th, yeah, he's all 12 together. So, in order to become that, you need to be able to embody all the 12. And also, on top of that, Robbie, the other thing I heard was you have to, and I don't know where this was, in some New Age book probably, but you have to also have lived as every race and in every culture, so
Yeah.
you can see, for instance.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I was
man, go
gonna
ahead.
say I really feel like and this is a vision that I've had in several states of consciousness, but that we are like, I almost see a ball, a fluid liquid plasma ball that's pulsing, and as it pulses, multiple balls pulse off of it and then return to the whole. And I almost feel like we are all each other through all time, in each other, like, and that's the necessary function of how the universe itself takes in and learns about the whole of what it is and how it is.
Oh, 100%, man. And that allows you to see, if you're really looking far enough back into that, is how people end up in the situations they're in. It's like it doesn't, things don't just happen. Like if you were a loving, like sweet kid when you were young, and then suddenly, like when you're 35, you're like nasty to people. Well, let's first of all, before we start accusing this person, let's have a look at what they've been through. And think about, well, if I went through that, how would I be? That's one of the things about understanding other perspectives and what people went through. And then my thing is, for me, it goes a step above that, and it's saying, how can I be of service to this person? What thing can I give them that would make them happy, or that make them feel like they were cared for, or loved, or fulfilled, or whatever. And then if I can, I try to provide that to them. And the thing, man, one of the things from the Bible, one of my favorite parts of the Bible is this part about, it may have been probably in a couple times, but it says, let your answer be a yes or a no. And when you get up in the higher consciousness, that's sort of, for me, like the final step in duality is being able to say what you're going to say yes to and what you're going to say no to. And then once you've established that, then I think you can move to a one-pointed consciousness, which means that what you're looking for. And the thing is I know it's cliche, and I'm not trying to be mushy at all, but it's about love and what that actually is.
Right.
And you have, a lot of what we do, I don't think probably us four really, I don't think nearly as much as probably a lot of people, but because we have high awareness. But the thing is you have to understand how what you do affects other people. And you have to understand what your boundaries are, and where do you draw your lines? What is acceptable to do when it comes to having to draw boundaries between, self-respect and allowing other people into your life, and things like that.
Well, also, when you look at even the Garden of Eden story in regard to being told not to participate or take from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that's essentially the dialectic of, the red and the blue, the good and the evil, the heaven and hell. So once you participate in the dialectic, then you lose that center. You lose that understanding, that one-mindedness that sees all sides cohesively.
Oh, 100%, man. And that, probably, how I feel about some of that, Robbie, in terms of, my first question was, if you put me in a paradise, why do I have to look behind my back? Why are you going to put, man, if I love someone, I'm not trying to conceal shit from them. I'm not trying to paint something in a way that it isn't, so if whoever created the garden, we'll call that person God.
The Elohim.
If God put me there and he loves me, again, I don't think it's necessarily he, you guys probably know what I'm talking about. God is everything. But if you're going to put me there and then you're going to say, don't touch this, first of all, I'm allowed to ask why. Okay. And you need to answer me, because that's being truthful. I mean, you're not going to, God, for me, God is not above us. Like you said, Robbie, we're all part of that God consciousness. So I expect anyone that truly loves me, if I ask them a question, you're going to answer me straight. Tell me what it actually is. You have to tell me what it actually is. So if I'm Adam and I'm not allowed to ask that question, I have a problem with that. That's not God to me. God doesn't do that. He doesn't obscure things and manipulate things. And I'm just going to say one extremely controversial thing, because it's really important, I think, to have this piece of information for people. And Robby, I think you and me talked about this before, and I can't actually completely remember where you stand on it. But the thing is this thing between the Old Testament God and the New Testament God.
Right.
Okay, a lot of people say it's the same person, and I say it's not. And the reason I say it's not is because of what he asks people to do.
Yeah.
I'm not interested, if I'm an Old Testament person, I'm not interested in killing an animal just so you can have its blood or you can have its fat. What is that?
Yeah, that is interesting.
It's sick.
Do you
It's sick,
believe
man.
in the
So
do you
okay,
believe in
so
the possibility of an evolving God form?
an evolving gospel, you said, Robby?
I like that.
An evolving God form, like it was a wrathful, vengeful God that has in itself ascended and become more compassionate.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I believe that, but I think from the information I have and the vantage points I've looked at it from, it's really more of an astrological story, which is a
Right.
high,
Of
kind of
course.
higher story. Yeah, it's a higher story than that. There's parts that different beings play in order to fulfill the astrological principles and the cycles of time.
Yeah.
I just want to
So
jump
having said,
in. Sorry, Dave. I just want to respond to Robby, because I think this is like such an interesting. Robby, I think, knows this is such an interesting topic for me. I actually do totally agree with Robby. I think that you can say that the Old Testament God was like a Rudra figure. I think that fits him very well. An angry storm god, running across the plains, howling with thunder. And then he becomes Shiva, so he closes his eyes. And then he becomes Bhairava when he realizes that he has to come back and emanate back into the world. But he doesn't really want to, right? So he's still cycling through consciousness. So this is really the major break between Indian Tantra and Buddhist Tantra, is that we believe that like the Rudra Bhairava, like that more angry god, but he's not really angry anymore. He's kind of like chilled out a lot. He he is the emanating consciousness that we all have, because we all have consciousness. So he is like the mind. But then there's other layers, just like Dave is saying, like there's like we live in a multiverse, so it's there are more factors than just Rudra Shiva. But I agree with you, Robby. I think that's a very interesting way to look at it. I've really been on that kick myself, like looking at the evolving God form, and I actually don't dislike the. I know that people have like their issues with the Old Testament, but there is a Kabbalistic, numerological, deep connection between the Old Testament and the expanded King James. I'm not talking about the King James that we have now. I'm talking about the one that includes the apocryphal, some of the apocryphal.
Right.
And also the Ethiopian Bible, like the Tewido Bible. That is probably the best in terms of Kabbalah, in terms of the numerology, because you have to think that there is a deep connection between what was going on in Greece, because they were all, even the people that said they were pagans, they were all Judeo-Hellenic. They were all drawing from this like corpus of texts that were all like in a pool. It wasn't just like, oh, you're a Jew and you're like a pagan. It wasn't really like that. It was much more like nebulous sometimes. So I think that there's a very deep connection numerologically, and I think that is very metaphysically significant. So I am very against the idea of severing the Old Testament from the New Testament, because, and it also doesn't make sense in terms of Christ, because he has to have the lineage of David. He has to be related to Solomon. He has to be related to Moses. I mean, that is how the story works. He is the descendant of Enoch, through the line of Mary,
all the way down.
Exactly. And Robby, you're really good at this. I'm not as good at the biblical stuff, like nearly as much. You're like the master of this. But yeah, I think he has to be the priest. That's how it works, right? He has to be the rabbi who brings us into the new kingdom. That is sort of the whole idea. So, and which is in yourself, like Dave said at the very beginning. So I
Right.
agree, but I just think it's important to think of it and not fixate on, because when we fixate on God at lower consciousness, say the Old Testament God is lower consciousness. I'm not saying that necessarily that I believe that, but I'm saying if we fixate on that, we also are assigning attributes to God. And the rule in medieval Kabbalah is never to assign attributes to God, because God is turquoise like the sky and God is pristine.
Right.
So, we have, I mean, I'm not saying any of us, but I'm just saying there is a tendency sometimes to attribute like evil or this or,
Yeah.
different qualities, even mercy, because I think that plays a big role in what's going on right now. This attribution of like over compassion, this like false mercy, false virtue, and it's very smothering. And it's like, I know that the E-Right sometimes calls it the longhouse syndrome, or like y'all get trapped in the longhouse. That is kind of mercy. That is God stuck at Chesed. And God should not be stuck at Chesed. God should be free to move through the spheres, but
Through the spheres.
at Kether and Chokmah. So I just think there's something really interesting there. I know that I probably didn't articulate it well, but yeah, I just wanted to chime in with that.
No, that was great.
Brilliant, that, Jin. Yeah, that was brilliant, that, mate. Nice one, Jin.
Well, and just like that evolving God form, I mean, sometimes children have to be disciplined. Just like with Saturn, you have to be pushed into, and it's interesting. Just I think that form, as far as the evolving God form, also in relation to the evolving cosmos itself.
Yeah, I love that, Robby, because if
Deep
we
that, mate.
yeah, I agree. There's always a constriction and an expansion. It's a dialectical relationship. There's something
Right.
always going on. If you want to think of it planetary between Jupiter and Saturn, I think that that's totally true. I think that, I mean, I don't know I'd love to hear what Dave has to say about it, but I mean, I think there's a very strong dialectical relationship between Saturn and Jupiter, and like the contraction and expansion.
Yeah.
Jen, that's exactly where I was about to go, so I appreciate that. You guys have brilliant outlooks on that. I really like to listen. And you know what? Honestly, depending on, I do a lot with dimensions. I believe in in fact, infinite multiple universes. So just because something is true doesn't mean that something else is not also true. And again, it's not a cop-out. This is how quantum physics works. Is every time something splits, it forms a different system. So anyway, it can all be true. It can all be true at the same time. It can be true at different gradients. I mean, it's all wide open. What I think is the most important thing for us to do as humans is decide where you stand on moral issues. What is acceptable action? What is not acceptable action? Which goes into Dharma, which, if we have time, I'd like to talk more about that too, Jen, because it's very important to me. There's some things for me that are always good, always correct. Some things that are always bad and always incorrect. And there's a lot of gray things in the middle. And the gray things in the middle for me are Dharma based, meaning that it's going to be situational. And it's a situational, not based on what I feel like doing. It's not like that. It's look at everything together and make the best decision for your circumstances. Yeah. Okay, so the Jupiter-Saturn question is one of the most important questions. We actually just had that conjunction a few years back. You guys probably know about that. In December, I believe, is on the winter solstice.
Mm-hmm.
And they were within, like a degree of each other? You couldn't even separate them in the sky. It was amazing, right in front of each other.
Yeah, I was
right in line with each other. Okay, so the thing about this is that when you look at, this is one of the first things I learned back in 2015 from my friend Santos Bonacci. He's the person that I learned the basics of astrology from way back about 10 years ago. And he talked about the days of the week, and he talked about how they are related to the planets, and then he talked about how all that's related to the religions. And he was very clear to me, and I was sleepless for a while trying to understand what I was supposed to do with this. And I remember, it changes the narrative so much that it makes you very uncomfortable for a while. But you're not given it. I don't believe we're given information for it to scare us, just to try to help us to do the right thing. But what he said, well, if you want to know why people worship, we'll just go with the three main religions right now. Well, it's the three main Abrahamic religions. And that story in itself is fascinating, to really take a hard look at the story of Abraham and how all that happened. But anyway, so what you have is Muslims worshiping on Friday. And the reason they do that is because their planet is Venus, who is also called Freya.
100%.
Right.
But I don't agree with the Nordic attributions, but we can get into that. That's a wholly different thing. But I do agree Islam has a very close relationship with what we would call Shukra. Sorry, I couldn't think of it. But yes, Shukra. Yeah.
Okay, which is Venus, right, Jen?
Yeah, that's Venus. But it's not a girl. It's a anti-god. It's an Asura.
You know what's interesting about that, man? This is really interesting because there are also male figures throughout. This is actually very important. I need to try to get more into this part. But there's also, if we're talking, about if you're trying to give something, assign them a sex or gender, which I don't think we always have to do that. People want to do that, fine. A lot of, especially in the East, a lot of that doesn't happen. But when you're talking about Venus, there are other gods that are associated with Venus, such as Quetzalcoatl.
Oh.
Okay, and he had a brother, and one of the things that was interesting is that he I think it must have been Quetzalcoatl, but anyway, his brother was also Venus. But here's the key to this: is he was the dark Venus, his brother was the light Venus. And so sometimes what happens, it makes your head spin truly, but it's important to try to allow for some of this for understanding, is that when you have something representing a planet, or you have a divinity figure come down from a certain planet to the earth, if that divinity figure wants to, or if it's in agreement with the astrological cycle, that person can split their consciousness into two bodies and exist in separate bodies and work together for the same principles. I think that's what happened in that case. And it goes more, you talk about two is nothing compared to what some of these deities do. They'll split themselves. It actually reminds me of Harry Potter a little bit. It's the first time I ever saw that concept. Splitting yourself into like 7 pieces, so that you can't be destroyed or whatever. Voldemort, I believe, did that.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not going to give the rest away. Watch the series, guys. It's a good one. I'm about to give it away. I'm not going to do it. So anyway, back to the days of the week, though. You got Venus for Friday. Saturn is Saturday. That's why it sounds like the same word. Well, Jewish people worship on Saturday. Okay, and then Sunday, what is that? That's the day of the sun in the sky, or the Son of God. And there's a lot of supporting evidence for that. The primary one is the winter solstice, which is called the birth of the sun, because you're going to start to get more sunlight every day. And it's not random that it happens when it does on the 25th, because the sun, barely moves for 3 days, or I say 3 1/3 days, which is 33. And then on that third 3.33 day on the 25th, it starts to gain power. And that's when the sun is born. Right. So the sun is, yes, it's the sun in the sky, but, according to most traditions, Jesus is also a solar deity.
Right.
So it's also him, and it's his story. Okay, but it's more interesting than just understanding the days of the week. You got something else going on too, and this is the part that's probably going to be the most controversial thing I say on the entire show. In fact, I don't know. I don't think I can top this. So, the Son of God, that's one of the references to Jesus. And the question is then, well, who is God? And you have some religions splitting God into 3 figures, Catholicism. I grew up Catholic, and I left really long time ago. But the thing about it is we're talking about who is God. And again, when I had mentioned the Old Testament, and I really don't disagree with what Robby and Jen were saying about that. It is an evolution. It's always an evolution. And that's what astrology does for us. That's what time cycles do for us. It tries to bring us through different conditions so that we can try to get to a better place. There's a lot of karma in there. There's a lot of dharma along the way. But at the end of the day, it's trying to assist us. But we also have to make right with what we've done. Okay, so when you look at the word, I do a lot with etymology. I want to give credit again to Santos Bonacci. He's the person that got me started on that. The reason why is because he was talking about, well, hey, you want to know where that comes from? Look at the word. Look at the word, study the phonetics, how it sounds. Also study how the letters are positioned. It's, you
Right.
want to look at everything. Sometimes you have to rearrange letters to find the meaning, but I'm not kidding. Probably 80% or more of the information I found has come through etymology.
Yeah.
It's like I can't find any other information on the topic, so I just write the word down and I stare at it for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I literally ask, what am I missing? I know there's something else in here. I'll start rearranging letters, and so anyway, you'd be amazed at what you find from that. And one of the things I found, I don't know when this was, it was maybe fairly recently, maybe 2 years ago. I'm looking at the word God. And some people I know even have a problem with that word. And what Jen was talking about too is very valid, is that what is the sound, what are the phonetics associated with, which figure is it associated with, what time in history, and I agree that European planets are, I'm not going to say, well, I mean, they are kind of a devolved form of how they were created in the beginning. This is after so many bad things happen on the planet and disintegrations of societies and really high level civilizations, certainly after Mu and Lemuria and Atlantis and all these other places in ancient Egypt and everything. And, you got to expect it's going to continue to kind of devolve. And so that doesn't surprise me that we maybe come up with names that are maybe not the ones that we want, or they don't fully represent what is that actual energy is. So anyway, I was looking at the word God recently. There's a couple things that happen. The obvious one, and I know this has been in memes a lot, but it's the word dog backwards.
Right.
Okay, so how does that happen? Well, if you look at dogs, the nice dogs, I can't do what a nice dog does, and I try really hard. I'm talking about the level of honesty and truthfulness and compassion and love. I've had dogs come up to me, and I'm astounded, man. Just amazing. They're truly embodying God to me, and they're probably the creature I've seen that the closest that can do that. So when you talk about the dog, now you want to look at the dog star, which is of course Sirius.
Yeah. And
Sirius, some people believe, including myself, that is really the true Jesus. Jesus is much above. I don't even know if I know where Sirius. I don't know if it's in the solar system. I think it might be outside of it. But
Sirius,
what I do believe it's
got a 6,413 year cycle. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, Sirius does? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the thing that I do focus on with Sirius, though, is that, sorry guys, it's that it's the entrance to our solar system, and I do believe that you have to go through Sirius before you're going to come anywhere into our solar system. Period. And that's why it's in all the Disney movies. It's like always see the blue star and the blue princess. Jesus in Sirius. If you look at the word Sirius, you get the word Isis right in it, and you look at Isis, you get Isa, and then you get Jesus.
Mysteries of Isis.
Crazy that, mate. Love that.
Well, and also with Sirius, you have Sirius B, that during the dog days of summer when Sirius is at its peak, that basically Sirius B becomes the sun behind the sun, or the black sun, which is essentially Cetos, or the hurricane force.
I agree with that, Robby. I believe Sirius powers our sun. It's a blue star, great blue star. Okay, so this is, you guys, brilliant contributions. This is the last thing I want to say about this, is that that was one of the things I pulled from that, was the word dog, and you take it back as far as you can. And the other thing I should say about that, you mentioned Sirius B, and of course you've got the Dogon. That's Sirius B from those traditions, I believe, in Mali, Africa. And the other thing that happens is you get dragon. And it's not random that when you see, I'm going back to the movies, you look at the Never Ending Story. Why does Falkor look sort of like a dog? Maybe they came from the same, I believe they came from the same lineage, and at some point split off. There's obviously, beneficent and maleficent dragons. But the dragon story is worldwide. And it's not random that you got Draco up at the center of the sky. Everything's, revolving around Draco at the center. All the North Stars are kind of right around Draco, which is the dragon.
Right.
So I believe that the dragons were enlisted to create Earth and actually create the Earth system. I believe. I don't know. I don't think they did it, but I think they were the ones that did the work, perhaps.
Interesting.
In any case, and then they put their signature at the top of the sky, saying, we're the ones that did it. So the last point I want to make about this, about the word God, is that there's another word in there, and it's a phonetic word. It's harder to find the phonetic words because it's not the same spelling. But when you look at God, it's very close to the word goat. And goat is Capricorn, and Capricorn is ruled by who? Saturn.
Saturn, yeah. And I the got. That's an old ancient tradition of worshiping the got, which was one of the first god forms.
The got, right, exactly.
Right.
Something really interesting about this, Dave, is that in the Puranic stories, Shiva, so Mahakal, so who would be at Bina or Saturn, he severs the head of Brahma, who in this case is Kashyapa, although sometimes it's said to be a different Brahma, so the creator god. He severs the head of him, and he places a goat's head on it in its way, because the Kashyapa or Brahma lusted after his own daughter. So it's like God lusting after his own creation, which is
that.
So I just think that that's very interesting.
That's true on many levels too, Jen, because the daughter of Saturn is Venus. And Venus is Freya, is all these, I think is Eve. It's all of these people. There's so many things that storylines have overlapped, But the thing with Saturn and Jupiter is that, again, in the European traditions, Jupiter is the son of Saturn. And oftentimes Jesus is depicted as the sun. He's also depicted as Jupiter. Yeah, and so the son of Saturn is Jupiter. And so I'm okay with, and again, let me qualify this, I'm very pro-Christ. And we have to look at morality and decisions instead of mythologies when we're talking about these people and these energies. That's what's important for me. But I would say, astrologically speaking, that again, let me make one more qualification here. Saturn is Satan. That's why it's the same word.
Right.
So you have Saturn, or you could say Satan. The father of Jesus is Satan. But this is the elevated version. This is the highest level of Saturn.
Right. And when you get into Jupiter, the name Jupiter, Jui Patar, means God the Father.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, mate.
I've also heard Peter the Jew, from the story of Jesus, Peter.
Right.
So,
well, this is brilliant.
Just out of curiosity, you mentioned Jesus. Then, what about like Lucifer as being part of it, because he's at light as well?
Well, he's the morning star, which is Venus again.
Venus, the morning and evening star.
Exactly.
Like you were saying, the split of the god in form, in essence, before you were talking about.
I think that's. Sorry, Dave. I'll just say really quickly that sometimes in Vedic astrology, well, this is always in Vedic astrology, is that the morning and evening star is, yes, Venus. So both of you are totally correct. But it sometimes can also refer to Mars. So when you're doing Vamacharya or left-handed practices, you would time it for the evening of Tuesday or the evening of Friday, specifically for that. And you usually do it for a goddess, but then it could also be for Mahakala or Bhairava, so the ferocious form of god time.
And Venus and Mars are parallel to each other on the Tree of Life as well, I believe.
They have a very close connection, and like the red, like when you're talking about like densities of Netzach, red is a very prominent color, as is purple, which happens obviously in the synthesis of blue, and so they have a very deep relationship, Mars and Venus.
Right. And they're on the same level, like as far as you move up and ascend the tree. they're equal to each other in height.
100%.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, in astrology too, they're opposite to each other. So,
Right.
you know, we got Aries and Libra ruled by Mars and Venus. And if you know, some people in a dualistic system, you need both or you don't have a completion. You have to
Right.
have the love component. You have to have the war component. And actually,
Right.
and I'm interested what you believe about Freya too, Jen, but I just want to say this, it'd be a good segue, is that she's a goddess of love and of war. She's a Valkyrie,
Right.
you know? So like she embodies both.
Well, and Jesus even said in the Bible that he was the morning star. And that's what's led a lot of people to believe that Jesus and Lucifer are brothers.
Well, I personally think they're the same person, and I
Right.
think it's just a different function of that character or that energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Pick
you
up
know,
that
there's no.
description.
Sorry, Dave.
I was gonna say real fast. You know, this is not. All we're doing is, from my perspective, is we're making connections and we're making solid connections. Shouldn't take away from people's faith. You know, I'm not trying to stir the pot or anything. I'm just saying, like, the mythologies support what we're talking about, and you guys haven't said anything that I like 100% disagree with at all. It actually all fits. It all makes sense, and I think you know, when you're trying to understand creation, let's just say that there was a creator that started the Earth system. What you would do is, you know, you put a piece of yourself into everything you create. So you're not complete, like you were saying before, Robby, until you have embodied all 12 signs of the zodiac, and excuse me, also the traditional 7 planets, if not the full 10 planet system.
Right.
So that's all part of God. And it's just sometimes I think when you're talking about karma and you're talking about trying to learn and increase your consciousness, you have to compartmentalize it for some people, really for probably most of us. So you can see like a concentrated version of what is it like if my chart is Mars heavy. You know, then you really understand what that is. Because, you know, we all have all these capacities within us, and there's, you know, what you want to do is you need to balance the system. That's the whole point. And then eventually, my belief, when the system's completely balanced, then you've earned your freedom, and that's called ascension.
Right.
Yeah, I think that was a great point, Dave. I'm just gonna say about the Freya thing is that yes, Durga. So that would be she's not equivalent. So I do not consider the Norse deities equivalent to the Puranic deities. They're not the same. I don't even think the Norse deities are equivalent to the IE deities, like the Indo-European deities. Or the what's in the Vedas anyway. I think there are parallels, but when you're looking at the time of the text being produced, like the Norse and Germanic text, you are looking at a much later date.
Sure.
And the Puranic deities are being produced in the 1st century AD. So when we're talking about Durga, who's definitely the oldest of probably the Puranic deities, maybe Shiva, maybe Vishnu, in different names. Like they don't have those names, but maybe those are older. But Durga as a name and as a form, that is pretty much the oldest Puranic deity. So she is similar to Freya in some capacities, but from when I went and spoke with Stein, my understanding is Freya is a lot more about sex. Durga is not about sex. Durga is the mother, so she only has eyes for her husband Shiva. Like that's sort of what makes that story work. And so but she is very closely associated with Venus. That is her day. Like Friday is her day. That's the goddess worship day. If you're just like doing normative kind of like Puranic Hinduism, that would be your day. So I think that that's very interesting. And I do think there are like multiple densities of the planets and different names that correspond to the different densities. And then getting up into supernal powers, Durga is not the supernal force of Venus, but she is like the highest, we'll say like the highest name that you can access with regular normative rites, regular normative ritual, orthodox ritual. So I think that there is a commonality, but when you're looking at like the Sanskrit names, which are by far the oldest names for the days of the week that we know, obviously the Sumerian names are older. Robby knows more about this than me, but the Sanskrit names are quite old. Like we're talking like maybe 2,500 to 3,000 years old. They refer to the Vedic planetary names. So like the name for Friday is pretty much the same in most Indian languages still to this day, even Dravidian languages. So it's always referring to Shukra. So it's just referring to the planetary, like the Graha. It's just referring to the planetary intelligence. Like that's how I would say it in magic. Like we're just talking about the planetary intelligence. We're not talking about the supernal power. We're not talking about the higher angelic force. None of that. It's just like the specific thing. So Durga definitely rules Venus, but she's also greater than Venus. That's how I would characterize it.
She may be coming through. I mean, she's said to be outside of our solar system, I'm assuming, right, Jen?
So this is really where it gets complicated. So she descends on a lion and then through Venus, because Venus is like when you're looking at the Jyotish sort of directionalities of how they consider the planets to be in the solar system, Venus is at our highest eastward point. So when the light descends, say from Kether, or into the universe or into the material creation, it has to diffuse through Venus, which is considered to be the quality of a diamond. So it diffuses in a prismatic light. So that is her. That is who she is. So when she's the mother, so she's the singular beam of light, comes down through the diamond, diffuses into the seven rays, which is very similar, obviously, to Kabbalah and to Zoroastrianism, which I know Robby's very fond of. And but they create the matrikas, the seven sisters of the Pleiades. So that's a little different, but there is a similarity there. And so in sometimes like when Dave, you were saying like Isis, well, we have like the deity Green Tara, who is also White Tara, who is the North Star. So there's like a very close relationship between like that fixed kind of polar star and light and like the goddess form. So I haven't quite put it all together, but there is a reference to the name, like Tara means star. Many of the goddesses refer to specific higher zodiac nakshatras. So it depends. It really depends on the goddess name. And like Tantra is very complicated because they put different goddess names. It's sort of like Kabbalah in the sense that different names refer to different densities, but maybe of the same goddess, maybe different kinds of intelligence, different kinds of consciousness of the same goddess. So sometimes it can get confusing because you might be referring to like everybody knows like Kali. Like Lee and I did a lot on Kali, like 3 episodes.
Yes, mate. Loved it.
You know, Kali has many facets, and that's just the reality. And like the who people think Kali is not really who she is in her own Puranas. It's not really who she is in the Tantras. It's not really who she is in like the greater kind of story of creation and destruction. It's only like they're only really referring in the West. They're only really referring to a facet of her. So that's kind of like the story of Durga, is that she's the mother, but she doesn't really possess her own will. It's kind of she is created by the prayers and the will of the other deities, the supernal deities like Shiva and Vishnu, not just the lower deities, but yes, she's also composed of them, but she's kind of their will. But when she becomes Chandika, which is the shining golden one, then she possesses her own will. So you know, it's complicated, and like I can never give like really clean answers. I want to, but it's it's just really hard.
Right.
Yeah, I think I mean that's brilliant, man. Just how you put that. But I really think what came up to me when you were talking about how it's complicated and everything. By the way, I believe that Inanna also has an association with the lions. She also has an association with Venus. So these things, you know, they repeat, and it's trying to point us to something. But a lot of times, it's just one level of what the larger meaning is. So when I think about I think about deities who exist outside of our solar system, which, I believe there's infinite deities outside of our solar system. We wouldn't even believe just how amazing and beautiful and kind they are. We don't have words for it. We don't have energy for it,
Right.
But the thing is I feel like if you're knocking on the door of our solar system and you're a higher deity, I feel like when you project yourself or you project your energy into that system, you have to kind of abide by the local rules. So
Right.
if you're looking at how you can manifest yourself and you see Venus down there and you're like, yeah, this is the energy I most associate with, then you kind of filter your energy, maybe most of it through that. And then people might refer to you as Venus because that's the closest part of you they can see, but you're actually standing way back, way outside when you project that in. So I think that a lot of that happens too. And something else you said, Jen, I've heard, well, also Durga, of course, there's a dragon again, or dog. And the references don't go away, with the phonetics. But the last thing I want to say too is with the Norse mythology is that I recently read, I think it was the prose Edda, and this is a poetic Edda too. I think it was a prose Edda that I read, and I was actually really surprised. And I'm not putting any culture down or any mythology or anything, but I was very surprised by the immaturity of these gods. Vindictive, like egging each other on. No, for me, that's not a god.
Right.
And again, this came much later on, the mythologies from that part of the world. And I think just like what we do, the thing I thought about first was politics, is that you put all of your energy into a certain candidate and you become that person in some ways. They're your speaking piece, and you can choose a planet or a deity or whoever you want to and say, yeah, that represents me. And then some of these lower gods will take on that name of that person, whether it's true or not, whether they actually represent that energy. And for more times, probably they don't. But like, if you state that that's who you are, who you associate with, then that's what people associate you with. And sometimes it's actually the exact opposite of what you claimed it was.
Mhm.
So literally, like, I can really appreciate what you said, Jen, is that you always want a clear answer. You never really get it. You have to be when you go into the deep mythologies, you just got to be happy with just understanding like the parameters, the general energy system. And for me, again, what was the most important is what do we do with the information? It's exciting to hear it, but for me, it's about applying it to higher consciousness. So if that helps us to get to some higher level of understanding, I think that's what we should do. The last thing I want to say too is that I know people, this came up a couple years ago for the first time, and they said, in relation to one of the ancient deities, they said, man, it's the strangest thing to hear. I literally like sat for hours. I didn't even know what to do with it. They said they actually, they let me be them once. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And the way I conceive of that now, after thinking about it for a while, is that, I mean, there's many explanations, but what I think is that, as a deity, I think if someone wants to associate with you, you can allow them a vision, you can allow them to be a part of you for a while.
Mm.
But the other part about it is that I think some of the existences that have already played out are they're recorded and by the universe. And when you have a spirit who wants to experience incarnation, to be in a physical body, you can opt to jump into a pre-existing form that's already happened,
Right.
and you can just ride that system and ride that wave. And you can I don't even know what a good example that is, but it's like when you go on an amusement park ride, like you're going to go where that train goes. You can't like say, I want to go off to the track this way. No, the train is going straight, or it's
Right.
going to take the curve. You have to, and you're sitting there and you're watching what's happening. And I think that's another option when you talk about consciousness and existence. You can come in and you can be someone who's already existed. They may end up, and that's a created form. It could be like an AI system with a high super consciousness that's like a benevolent kind of thing, and you get to actually experience that, look through their eyes and experience everything that they did, if that's what you need to learn.
I think it's interesting when you go back and you look through all the histories that there's all these characters that when they reach the point of some type of enlightenment, that they have a night journey where they're taken up into the cosmos and shown the workings of the heavens, and like the blueprint of all time is laid out before them, and they see spirits ascending and falling. And so, like you're saying, like it's almost a pre-recorded kind of story that basically is reoccurring through these various figures through time.
Brilliant, man. That's really brilliant, Robby.
Yeah.
I just, sorry, Lee, just let me say this, and then
yes, no problem, mate. No problem, mate.
I want to say that I totally agree with what you said, Dave, about like the deities sort of replacing each other, or like you'll call one name and like someone in there like hosts, like one of the other deities that is a host but not necessarily the deity will come to you. That is a very tantric idea. So you are supposed to kind of push through this idea of the overly resplendent deity, like it's like the idea of the angel who shines too brightly. That is not a god. That is just like a lower ganas or a host. So it can be like a variety of other spirits. Sanskrit has like a huge cosmology of spirits. It's very autistic in a good way. It really places them in specific categories. But yeah, the true deity is not overly resplendent. It's not overly. It's kind of overwhelming emotionally, but not like it doesn't visually obscure itself. That's sort of the idea.
Yeah, it's above that, when you're talking about the original creation. It's something it's hard for us to understand, but the closest approximation I think about is sort of like I said before, is either yes or no. You see someone, you let them talk for a while, and the only thing that we really need to say is yes, I want to associate with this person, or no, I don't. And that's it for me.
Yeah.
That's it. That's really it. Very simple.
Yeah. Gentlemen, absolutely crazy content. Unbelievable. Seriously. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, General.
Thanks, Lee. Love you, brother.
Yeah, it's good to chat.
Yeah, I love you too. I love everybody.
Robby, Jen, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you, Robby. You're gonna do this again soon. So
oh yeah,
really appreciate you, and same, Dave. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
you're welcome. Thank you guys.
Dave, Robby, Jen, just fucking incredible, mate. Just incredible. But before everybody goes, would you like to let everybody know where they can get hold of you? If you've got any questions or anything, do you want to start, Dave, please?
Yeah, sure. Best place is probably Facebook. It's the same name. It's under Dave Petrella, Petrella. Instagram, Dave Petrella 12. The number is 12 for 12. And then, of course, got my YouTube channel, which is probably easiest to find with Dave Petrella 12 if you punch it in. But if you put my name, my channel should pop up. It's fairly easy to find. And then on top of that, of course, I offer full Western astrology, tropical astrology services, mostly focus on birth charts, because you carry that with you everywhere you go, no matter what's happening on a daily basis. You have your birth chart, you have your planet stamped into your body, physically and mentally. That's going to exert the most powerful influence for you 24/7. I do relationship matching. I do business applications with astrology, and then principles of fasting and Eastern medicine. I can help with that as well, and general spiritual guidance. So if I can help anyone, please let me know. I love you all. I really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, I love you too, man.
Nice one, mate. Robby?
Yeah,
let everybody know what you got, please, sir.
Yeah, I have the Meta Mindcast, METTAMINDCAST, all one word. But you can get all my links on my link tree, which is just RMARX, R Marx at Linktree, and that'll pull up all my Facebook, Insta, everything.
Brilliant. Jin?
Okay, so I want to say thank you to all of you, Robby, Dave, and of course my man Lee, for putting this all together. Sorry, I can't even think. I'm sorry. So I have my feed is finally out after months and months. Lee and I have worked on it. So
Nice.
Threshold Saints, Spotify and Anchor. I have a link tree. My Twitter is at Wukong Reborn, WUKONG Reborn. Instagram, Threshold Saints as well. And so I need to update my link tree really badly. I know that, but I do have most of my episodes that I've ever done on all different shows. So yeah, you can find me there, and I have like I think almost 10 episodes released on my feed, and yeah, I've got quite a few more coming.
Nice.
So then that's it, and yeah, thank you guys so much. It was like so amazing. Dave, it was honestly, I loved your episode that you did previously. So, and I can't wait to speak with you on Friday. I'm sure Lee will drop in for a few minutes at least. So,
Yes.
yeah, and yeah, it'll all be really great. So, thank you guys.
For
Thank
sure.
you too.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
guys.
Yeah. Fucking hell. Just it's crazy. It's crazy. Nice one, lads.
This,
I
this
will
is this
start.
is the example. This is the example for the future. You know, this is how I want people to be able to interact. We you know, we have a lot in common. We have some differences, but we're decent to each other. You know, and when you leave, everyone feels great. You feel even better than when you came in.
Right.
It's mate. It's what it's all about, Dave, isn't it? Well said.
Yeah,
Well
that's right.
said. Yeah. I'll stop recording now, but don't go anywhere, please. Thank you.